Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2023 film Knock at the Cabin. It's an M. Night Shyamalan film, and I watched it on Vudu. I did not go to the theater for this one. One of my big issues is I can't take notes in a theater. I can. I would just feel like a very rude person because I'm doing it on my phone, and yeah. Plus, it's just more comfortable. I can pause things, all that good jazz. But I did have to pay on Vudu. It's like 20. I think with tax, it's like $21 and some change. But it's close to what you're gonna end up spending if you go to the movie theater. So anyway, Knock at the Cabin, like I said, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. The last three films that he did prior to this one were Old, Glass, and Split. I did do a review of Old. I thought it was okay. I'm not one of these people who likes to pile on the M. Night Shyamalan hate train. There are a lot of people who like to hate on M. Night Shyamalan because everyone loved The Sixth Sense, and then everyone feels like in comparison to that film, he hasn't even come close. He's still making quite good films, and he has made quite good films for some time. I thought Old was fine. I enjoyed this film enough to recommend it. I thought it was pretty solid. I liked Devil. I thought that was good. I even liked films that people notoriously hate, like The Village and The Lady in the Water. I think those are good films. I just think it's an issue of how those films were marketed and what they actually were, and the expectation that was set versus what they actually were and the experience people had. So, M. Night Shyamalan, very talented. But this is an instance where it's not his base material. Because let me tell you, written by Shyamalan as well as Steve Desmond, who's actually working, doesn't have a lot of credits, but is working on a new Transformers movie called Transformers: A New Generation. Probably won't see it, not into that stuff. It's been bad from the beginning. And it's based on the book that's titled The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. Now, that's actually a book that's been on my list to try and get to at some point for a long time, because I heard really good things about that book when it first came out, and I read Rue Morgue magazine, and they have a bunch of book reviews, and it was in there, and they highly recommended it. So, heard it's an awesome book. Watching this film, I bet the book is better. I bet the book is way better, because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's kind of like left up to your imagination that just makes it even more intense and more scary, and yeah. Rupert Grint is in this, if everyone remembers him, Ron Weasley from the Harry Potter films, as well as Dave Bautista, which most people know him as either a wrestler, which he has not been for a while, or Drax from the Guardians of the Galaxy films. He did a really good job in this. First of all, the acting is very good. Like, it looks very good. It looks very good, the acting's very good. From a technical standpoint, a lot of very good things. It's just, how does the story play out? How's the pacing? All that type of stuff, which I'll obviously get into. But synopsis. I don't want to give you too much, but it's the initial concept of it is very simplistic. People show up at a cabin in the middle of the woods that this family is at, and it's basically in a home invasion film. But it's got its own story. It's got its own twist to things. And it's about what's at the root of these people showing up. Why are they there? What is going on? And that's what I'm not going to comment on, because that would really spoil things. What I told you about it basically being a home invasion film, that's easily seen in the trailer. That is in the synopsis. Yeah, so you probably already knew that, to be honest. All right, the opening credits. Purposeful. Now, as I'm watching it, I was like, there is no reason that these particular opening credits would be looking the way they are without there being some sort of purpose for it. So it's very purposeful. I like when filmmakers do that, so you can kind of watch the film and then look back on those things and be like, now I see the significance of this. It's not like it gives anything away. It's just, it means more after you're done the film. The opening scene feels dull and slow, but it also feels like it has more significance that you'll end up finding out later. And that I'm not going to tell you if it does or does not. I'm just saying it feels that way when you're watching it. It's a little bit slow and boring to start. Usually with these types of films, they try and like hook you with something intense. for the first scene, and then they show you the title card. But with this one, it's the opposite. It's very slow. It's very kind of plodding in a sense, and then things start to get going a lot more. But is there a big significance to what happens in the beginning? Maybe there is, and maybe there isn't. You would have to figure that out for yourself. There's a good air of mystery in the beginning of the film, too. There's a lot of, I don't want to say like confusion, because that kind of makes it seem like there's a problem with the storytelling or a problem with the way the film's done. But I was kind of like, what is going on here? And that's why I'm saying there's this air of mystery to it. Like, it really does intrigue the audience to be like, okay, A, what are we getting into right now? B, how is this going to play out? And C, what's the root of all this? What's the backstory? And that's the big driving factor in the film, is what is the backstory here? And you get that in kind of like little bits and pieces, and by the end, obviously, everything becomes full picture, and you can make your mind up at that point if you like the film or not. For me, I did. I thought, in general, it came out pretty well. Many characters seem a bit odd, but again, that is another purposeful choice that I liked. I liked the way the characters were created. I like the way they're written. I like the way they're acted even more. The dialogue is very well written in this film. It's definitely one of those things where you're feeling like there's not a whole lot of wasted dialogue, because there are plenty of films where you're just like, oh, this is kind of just like mindless drivel filler dialogue. There's not a lot of that in this film, I don't think. A lot of it adds to what's going on to the film, whether it's the actual story it's adding to, or it's adding to the atmosphere and the feeling of what you're supposed to be feeling as an audience member. As you would assume, it's well shot, because it's M. Night Shyamalan, been doing this for a while. Yes, it looks very good. Directing, cinematography, all that jazz, very good. Shooting locations, beautiful. Yeah, like it. When the premise of this is revealed, it feels like it takes the tension down, but they actually do a pretty good job of relatively quickly ratcheting it back up again. So for me, not everyone's going to experience it this way. Once they kind of reveal some important aspects of what's going on, I kind of felt like, I don't want to say let down, but like my guard was down a little bit. I was like, oh, this doesn't feel as like intense anymore. But then they do a good job of restoring that relatively fast. So it's kind of cool in that sense, because you start to like get a little more comfortable, and then you get uncomfortable relatively quickly, or at least I did. Like I said, dialogue good, acting very good. They do drop information at a pretty decent pace, which helps with the overall pacing of the film. This film is an hour and 40 minutes with credits, opening and ending credits. And yeah, I mean, I think they did a pretty good job with pacing, and a lot of what comes down to pacing is you need to have enough things going on that are just straight up engaging, that people are seeing, but you also need to drop little portions of important stuff for the story at like at good intervals, and they definitely do that with this film. So they did a pretty good job with setting up the script. It is light on gore. I will say that if that's something that really bothers people with horror films, being light on gore, there's a lot more of those shots of like cutting away and suggesting what's going on, or showing the aftermath of things as opposed to the thing head on as it's happening. That's more of like a big budget, I've worked on other films in Hollywood, I'm a big name type director choice, in my opinion. That's what I think M. Night Shyamalan's into. He doesn't really want to like cater to the gore hounds too much. I would have liked if it was more intense with that stuff, if it didn't look away, if there was more gore to it, but it also didn't kill the story at all, so it's a preference thing. The ending is decent, but I do actually think they stretched it out too much. More than a little bit, too. They could have had the ability to kind of like gut punch you and make you feel like, oh man, like gut punch you in the sense that like you get what's going on. Like that moment of epiphany where you're just like, oh man, like they could have done that and, you know, really stung you at the end and then just like left you. Like, that's my favorite way to leave a film, but it doesn't do that. Like, it gives you that stuff, but then it just like keeps kind of going, and then it just kind of like makes it a bit boring at the end, to be honest. I felt like there was a bunch of stuff at the very, very end that they really did not need at all. Probably should have been cut, because this film could have been cut a bit. I'm not talking about cutting a lot out of it, maybe like 10, 15 minutes out of it, because for the most part, it's a relatively tight script. So, yeah. The film feels small in scope because of the limited shooting locations, but it feels big in scope from the standpoint of the story at play here. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to go any further because I don't want to give any sort of spoilers away, but I like that kind of duality of it, where it's like, man, this feels like such a small movie because of where they're shooting, but story-wise, this feels like a huge story, you know? So I like that. I love that those things are paired together in this film. There's a lot at play here, including loss, religion, societal ills, personal judgment, even more. I just named a few things. It's one of those films where it's like, there's so much that's kind of commented on in ways that you're just constantly like, oh, this movie's just not like one subtextual thing or one theme going on. It's like, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot being said within the story. So, and it's not all face value. So, yeah, I did enjoy this film. Out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'd give it a nice 3.5-star rating. Thought it's pretty good. Yeah. But this is where you let me know your thoughts on this film. If you've seen it, go ahead and put them in the comments. You can do spoilers in the comments too, so everyone just know that. Also, do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate that. That's your best way to repay me. Also, hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 3 or 4 a week at this point. So, yeah. Help me out. Support me. Be my online buddy. Join this nerdy horror community I'm creating. But regardless, thank you so much for checking out this video, and until next time, keep it brutal.